Alright, so we're live, I believe. Yeah. So we're gonna do what we usually do always, and we're gonna get to react to some videos. Move the camera like that. A little more. Alright, so that's good. So we have a lot of videos that we can get over today, but there's one that I really want to go over today, and it's this one. The Crazy Engineering of Venice, which is the city in Italy, which from the time that I've seen it, Venice is like a city on the water, and I don't know how they do it because the water is very polluted, but it's good to watch it.
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix.
The
So we're going to be watching The Crazy Engineering of Venice by Primal Space.
year is 452. The Roman Empire is on the brink of collapse, and the Huns have just launched their attack on northern Italy. Several cities are completely destroyed, forcing the locals to go on the
Padua?
run. They head for a lagoon just off the coast
weird name
and
for
take
city.
refuge on
Padua?
several small islands, a decision that would no doubt save their lives. Against all odds, this small civilization eventually went on to build one of the most impressive feats of engineering the world has ever
wait,
seen.
that's what it looked like before?
Venice. Despite having no roads, no
That's
land,
insane.
and no fresh water, the Venetians
what it looks
managed to
like?
turn a muddy swamp into the most powerful and wealthiest city of its time. This unique layout
Wow.
of canals and bridges woven through hundreds of islands made Venice incredibly accessible, and it
Well, this kind of reminds me of that one arc of One Piece where they have the city pretty much living on water. And it kind of reminds me of this, honestly.
became the epicenter of all business. We
man.
modeled the entire thing to show you what's
looks
going
so
on
cool.
beneath the surface and how its clever design and medieval engineering allowed it to take over the world. When the first refugees arrived to start their new lives on the islands, they had the worst possible surface to build on.
Yeah, it
The
looks
small,
horrible.
marshy islands were made of an incredibly soft clay, which would barely hold the weight of a human, let alone an entire city. To create
Dude, and they decided to build a whole city on that mushy ground.
stable foundations for buildings, the Venetians collected large timber piles from the forests of Croatia and started hammering them into the ground. They drove them about
they
5
hammered it?
meters deep until they reached a much harder layer of clay. Not only did this stabilize the piles, but by packing them really close together, it compressed the surrounding clay, pushing out the water and making it much stronger. Once the piles were firmly in the ground, the tops were cut off and wooden planks were laid on top to spread the load. Special blocks of Istrian stone were then placed to raise the foundations above the water. This design was a stroke of genius, as the wooden piles were sealed away from the air, making it impossible for them to rot. To this day, almost all of the original piles are in great condition and are still holding up the city. Once the foundation had been
So they don't really like rot at all, so all that wood is still in perfect conditions. How did they figure this out? They have absolutely no technology or whatsoever. And tell me that many people knew that wood did this? Or do you think that they just did it out of luck? Like they just built the city with the wood, just hoping that it wouldn't collapse.
properly laid down, the buildings themselves were built. Venetians started off using wood for their houses, but after numerous fires, they switched to brick. To keep the buildings as lightweight as
brick.
possible, they had to be no more than 3 stories high. Lime mortar had to be used instead of cement because it was flexible and would allow the entire building to flex as the ground beneath slowly moved. The inner walls were built in a crisscross pattern that would also flex like a trellis. The facade walls, which had large windows and elegant stone designs, made them much heavier, and so in order to stop them from falling over, they were pinned into the floor using iron rods, keeping the entire building together.
Yo, I might sound like a nerd, but that looks like I might sound like a nerd, but that looks like a house that would be on Attack on Titan.
This method of building worked well for the Venetians, and soon several islands around the lagoon were established in this way. Instead of expanding outwards like most cities, these islands expanded into each other. At first, boats were the only way to cross between the islands,
That's
but
so cool,
eventually the islands grew closer together, and many could be crossed by simply wading through the shallow water on a horse. The next step in
Isn't it
Venice's
dirty by then?
evolution would, of course, be connecting the islands. Surprisingly, there were no bridges for the first 500 years of Venice's existence. But as the population increased and business started to ramp up, there needed to be an easier way to reach Rialto, the financial center of Venice. And so, the Doge of Venice set up a prize for the engineer that could design the best bridge. He announced this by putting up displate posters all around the city. Just kidding. Displate, today's sponsor, makes awesome metal posters that can be easily mounted using their custom magnet mounting system. They have an Netflix design without extra posters. It simulates just 4 splash primation of islands into a code primal space. In order to turn Venice from a collection of islands into a bustling city, bridges had to be built. The first attempt was a simple pontoon bridge that joined the 2 largest sections of Venice together, and crucially, provided quick access to the Rialto area.
Yeah, but
The
what about
bridge
the
was later
boats
upgraded to a
underneath
wooden
it?
bridge, which eventually burned down and collapsed before it was
Oh,
finally
damn.
replaced by a much stronger stone bridge.
That
To
was
build
so
it,
cool.
over 12,000 timber piles were driven into the banks of the canal, and 10,000 tons of stone were built
10,000
on top
tons.
to form the bridge. To this day,
That
the
looks
bridge
amazing.
still stands, and it serves
Dude,
as
it
the
looks
main artery in the center
so
of
good.
Venice.
It doesn't look like it has taken any damage at all. I don't know how it has not looked old, because that bridge is over 1,000 years old, and it's still holding up there. That's crazy. That means that there's like generations over 1,000 years ago that used the same bridge to get to one side, to get from one side to the other. That's crazy to think about.
After this, stone bridges started to pop up everywhere, turning Venice into a compact city made up entirely of canals instead of roads. This gave Venice a unique
Canals.
advantage, since the canals allowed goods and traffic to flow quickly through every part of the city. The messy overlap of pedestrians and horse-drawn traffic didn't exist in Venice, since the walkways and canals were completely separated. Yet people could transition between the two effortlessly without slowing down. By now, the city had become the most powerful and richest city in Europe. Everything being bought and sold went through Venice, and the Venetians were making enormous amounts of money. But
Oh,
as
shit.
business increased, so did the population,
Oh,
and the
yeah. What
demand
do you do
for
about-
fresh
what do you
water
do about the
was out of
population?
control. Despite being surrounded by water, Venice couldn't use any of it, since it was extremely salty and undrinkable. Without natural springs or rivers to collect fresh water, Venice relied upon boats to deliver water from the mainland. But with 170,000 people, the demand became too much, and the Venetian engineers had to get creative.
Imagine bringing your side project to life just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
From the beginning, Venetian islands were built around squares, which were initially just empty fields for animals to graze upon. The idea was to use these squares to collect rainwater. They started by digging out large areas under the entire square and lining the walls with a thick layer of clay to make it waterproof. The space was then filled in with sand and stones, and the surface was redone with tiles that would lead the water towards each corner of the square. From here, rainwater would flow into the basin and gradually filter through the sand and stones until it reached the main well at the center of the square.
Yo, I did not think about that. I totally forgot that you need to have a drainage system for the entire city. So what happened if you built like a bunch of houses that connected to each other before you build a sewerage system? Wouldn't you just get like flooded streets? How did they get around this the first like hundreds of years that they had this city.
To maximize the surface area for water collection, the roofs of the nearby buildings were fitted with gutters that would direct the water onto the square and into the drains. Venice then became an enormous funnel, which filled more than 600 wells around the city. The Venetians had once again engineered a masterpiece to save its city. But there was still one huge problem: waste. Until this point, people threw all of their waste out of the window, some of it landing in the canal. But for those who didn't live within throwing distance of a canal, urine, feces, and rotten food all ended up in the streets. And so, in the 16th century, the Venetians started...
Dude, how the fuck did they use the bathroom in those times then? Would they just go out and shit on the streets? Because I'm pretty sure they didn't have like toilet papers. No. I'm pretty sure they didn't have the toilets inside their houses yet. So that's probably more of a modern version of Venice now that we have. But I think, I'm actually curious what they did before it. Because they built the whole city like very close to each other, so I'm guessing it smelled like shit all around from all the people that lived there.
Building a network of underground tunnels that would collect the waste from every building and flush it into the canal. When the tide of the lagoon was down,
so there's a lot of
solid waste would collect at the bottom, and the liquids would naturally flow into the canals. Then, when the tide rose, it would flood the tunnels and pull the solid waste into the canal.
Ew.
The motion of the tide coming in and out twice a day would exchange the dirty water for fresh water from the sea, flushing Venice from all of its waste.
So if you go take a swim in Venice water, you're pretty much swimming in shit piss of the whole entire city. Ew. Ugh, that's fucking nasty.
The extremely salty water worked as a strong disinfectant, and thanks to this system, the streets became clean.
That's nice.
Amazingly, almost all of the incredible engineering that made Venice is still around today. The bridges, the canals, the buildings are all ancient relics sitting on a forest that has held up the entire city for over 1,000 years.
1,000 years.
And now,
That's
time
insane.
for the Primal Space giveaway. The winner of the previous giveaway.
So I'm actually curious, what happens if Venice gets an earthquake, like a very powerful earthquake? Is that entire city done for? Does Italy even get earthquakes? I can't say that I have heard of any earthquake going on like in Europe at all. In the sense of like Spain or like Italy, yeah, I have not heard of any big earthquakes happening there. I heard of like Japan or like other cities, but not Italy. Not specifically Venice, so I'm guessing what they have. So I'm actually curious what they have set up in case of an earthquake. Like, is the entire city fucked if they get a tsunami? Alright. It is what it is. Make some video, dude. I did not know that. If I do visit Venice, I will not be touching the water whatsoever. Let me just stop this. Wow, amazing video, dude. Alright, let's go on to our next video. It's very interesting. This seems to be good. This actually looks like a very good one.
Erlinger's sale is now on.
I was about to see some crazy,
Book now at
Welcome back to
crazy nice video. Alright, I'll just start recording again, so I can make videos out of this. So dark. Alright, so we're going to be watching the 10 least explored places on Earth by World Accounting Briggs.
the world according to Briggs, and today we're looking at 10 of the least explored places on Earth. You know, humans have been on this planet for a few years now. We've invented things like computers, drones, language, hula hoops, and the internet. With all that technology, there's still places on this spinning rock humans have barely explored. In today's video, we're looking at places that are essentially unexplored. You know, places that don't have Starbucks or McDonald's. Let's take a look.
No way. That's also crazy thing about.
Number 10, the Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is pretty much the Grand Canyon of the ocean, except it's way deeper and, of course, it's filled with water. It's the deepest part of the world's ocean, and it's located in the western Pacific Ocean. This trench is like the Mount Everest of the ocean. At least the Mount Everest back in the 1950s, when hardly anyone had reached the summit. Now, so many people climb Mount Everest, there's a traffic jam. Technology's got so much better. I wouldn't say...
You take turns to climb Mount Everest. Like you form a line. That is insane to think about. Like, but there's a very high chance that you might die climbing Mount Everest. Sorry. There's a very high chance that you might die climbing Mount Everest, and people still choose to do it just because they see other people do it. That doesn't mean that you have to do it, bro. Like, at all. And it's also very fucking expensive to climb it. I think you need at least like 10K or something like that.
It's easy, but it's not as hard as it once was. But the Mariana Trench reaches about 36,000 feet in depth, about 11,000 meters at its deepest point, known as Challenger Deep. Over the years, we've sent down all kinds of high-tech gadgets, robots, and even a few brave souls in submersibles to check out what's going on down there. Now, there was 2 notable manned missions down there. In 1960, a thing called the Tresty was sent down with 2 guys on it. And then James Cameron, the guy who did Titanic and Avatar, he did a solo dive in 2012. They've had a whole bunch of other robotic explorations, and they've revealed a surprisingly diverse ecosystem, or ecosystem, however you want to say it. It's kind of mind-blowing to think that there's so many wonderful life forms that can handle the intense pressure, cold, and darkness. Every time something or someone goes down there, it's like they're opening up a treasure chest of new information, helping us understand more about the Earth's mysterious deep sea environment.
Yeah, dude. I find that creepy that you can go out there and you can actually find a creature that we have never seen before in the Mariana Trench, just because they've been hiding down there for probably thousands of years, but they have never been seen by a human or recorded by a human, like, ever. And also, in the past few years, we're the only generations that have been able to go all the way down there. So the entirety of human creation, no one has ever been that deep in the water. So it is still very, very new to humans too.
Number 9, Antarctica's subglacial lakes. Antarctica's subglacial lakes are like nature's secret underground water park, tucked away beneath miles of ice. These hidden lakes are super intriguing because they've been isolated from the rest of the world for maybe millions of years, creating a unique environment that scientists are just itching to explore. Now, no one's made it down there to see what's happening. The exploration that has been done has been with ice-penetrating radar and other high-tech gadgets.
Okay.
Researchers have discovered over 400 of these icy hideaways. What's cool about this, and the pun is totally intended, is some of these lakes, like Lake Vostok, are massive, holding water volumes comparable to Lake Ontario. The exploration of these lakes is not just for the thrill of finding a new lake, it's crucial for understanding the climate change, life in extreme conditions, and even the possibility of life on other planets. If they eventually get down to these things, it's like unlocking secrets from frozen time capsules, and who knows what mysteries will be solved as we dive deeper into these icy depths.
Yo, how would you guys react if you found out that someone made a discovery that there's pyramids all the way in Antarctica? What do you think people would think if they found out there's pyramids also in Antarctica, like hidden beneath like mini glaciers, or hidden inside of glaciers? We have massive pyramids. Would that be crazier than the ones that are in Egypt? I think 100% yes. Because who the fuck made the ones in Antarctica? I'm not saying that there is, I'm just saying like it's a what if. Namib Desert.
Number 8, the Namib Desert. Oh, the Namib Desert. It's one of those places that makes you marvel at how anything can survive in such an extreme environment, yet the place is teeming with life in its own unique way. This desert is in Namibia, and it has another name, the Skeleton Coast. This desert is actually on a coastline, and it's also one of the foggiest places on the planet. It gets almost zero rain every year, but it gets plenty of fog. and that fog is why they call it the Skeleton Coast. Ships have been crashing on that shore since we started sailing. But the Namib Desert spans from Namibia to Angola and on down to South Africa. And it's considered one of the oldest deserts in the world, with some parts possibly existing at least for 55 million years. Through exploration, we've
People
uncovered
live there?
that this vast area
Is that fucking houses I see? How the fuck do they live there? There's nothing around there. You can see the whole background. There's not one living thing past those mountains. Like, how do you even get food? Cause I don't see a car down there.
expanse isn't just a bunch of sand. It's home to some of the highest sand dunes in the world. And they have some really strange things that grow here and no place else on the planet. They have a bizarre plant that looks like a cross between a giant unraveling fern and an alien life form. This plant can live between 400 and 1500 years. The problem with this place is there's no real human settlements and hardly any water. And for the longest time, nobody thought it was worth looking into because it's just a bunch of sand. But as they've explored a little, they've found things like that plant. I think it's pronounced a Welwitschia. I think this is one they'll start exploring more and maybe even start drilling into the sand to see what's underneath there, because as technology and equipment gets better, this will become more of an option. Right now, it's too harsh of an environment to do much exploration. There is a really cool thing that's live streaming 24 hours a day on YouTube, and I'll leave a link for it. It's a watering hole in the Namib Desert. I will warn you though, once you start watching it, it gets a little addicting and you'll have it playing in the background more than you think is healthy.
Weak erections? Check out this
Weak
chewable mint.
erections? No, what the
You
fuck?
know you don't have to come all the way to the pharmacy to get
Northern Patagonia ice field. Where is
Number
this?
7, North Patagonia ice fields. The North Patagonia ice fields, it's
In
like
Chile.
this massive chunk of ice tucked away in Chile. And it's honestly a bit of an adventurer's dream. Covering around 4,000 square miles, this ice field is the smaller sibling to the Southern Patagonia
looks
ice
beautiful.
fields. But don't let
Just imagine waking up to that view, bro. That looks majestic. It's probably very cold, yes, but like, there's people living in there, so I'm guessing they were. So I'm guessing they were somehow able to build the houses to bring the materials to get there. And dude, that looks like a very peaceful place to live. I don't know if you're gonna get good Wi-Fi, but still, like, it looks beautiful.
that fool ya. It's packed with glaciers, rugged terrain, and some seriously breathtaking views. Explorers and scientists have been poking around here for years trying to understand its secrets. They've braved the cold, treacherous conditions to map out the glaciers, studying how climate change is affecting the ice, and just marvel at the sheer beauty of the place. Even though explorers and scientists have been going up there for years, they estimate they've only explored about 10% of the ice fields. This is another place that the environment is so harsh, scientists and explorers for a long time just didn't go there because they didn't have the equipment necessary and they didn't think there was much to learn. When they started going there, they found there's a whole bunch to learn. Sadly, most of that information is below sheets of ice.
Yeah. Amazon rainforest.
Number 6, the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon rainforest, often dubbed the lungs of the earth, is this vast, sprawling oasis of biodiversity that overflows with life, mysteries, and the kind of greenery that makes you think of every adventure movie you've ever seen. It makes me think about a dozen or so documentaries I've watched. Through years of exploration, we've only begun to scratch the surface of what's in the Amazon. Scientists and adventurers have trekked through its dense underbrush, discovering thousands of plant species, wildlife that boggles the mind, and indigenous tribes whose way of life offers a glimpse into the different kinds of existence that we have on this planet. It's
Dude, that is crazy. There's people that actually live in these rainforests. Now, there's many tribes that live here, and that's insane to think about because you could be just going off. You could just be going out on a walk, for example. Wake up, and you could be fighting I don't know, some type of tiger, jaguar, or some snake. That is crazy to think about. Like to this day, they probably don't know about technology as much or about religion. They probably don't care about politics or anything like that. Their main survival, their main priority is just surviving, get food. And I don't know, just keep reproducing, I guess.
Like every trip into the Amazon peels back a layer of the world's natural wonders, revealing secrets that have existed long before humans decided to take a peek, and before humans decided to start tearing down the rainforest. Whenever you bring up the Amazon rainforest being destroyed or deforestation or anything like that, someone always wants to bring up the fact that there's more trees in the Amazon now than there were in the 1980s. That is true, but it's misleading. 100 acres of ancient rainforest is not the same as 100 acres of saplings. It is great that they are replenishing the rainforest and putting those trees, but for them to get to where the old rainforest was, it's like 100 or 200 years down the road. Don't get me wrong, it's a step in the right direction, but not all rainforests were created equal. From the towering trees that form the canopy that actually blocks out the sky to its winding rivers, the Amazon is a testament to the wild, untamed beauty of our planet. Now, I've been in rainforest before in Central America, never been in the Amazon rainforest, but they always say it blocks out the light. There are parts of the rainforest, like especially if you get down into the valleys and stuff, where you have no idea if it's night or day without looking at your watch. Different groups have different numbers of how much the Amazon rainforest has been explored. Some say it's about 10%, others say it's about 25%. Either way, that's a lot of rainforest. We have no idea what's out there.
What the fuck? So only 10 to 25 of the rainforest has been explored. 80% of the jungle does. We still don't know what's in there. So we could have animals that we've never seen before just living there in the rainforest. It's probably mostly like, I don't know, insects, I think, that have to be discovered there, but it's also kind of crazy to think about it. There's that much that we have not explored in the rainforest. But then again, it's also very, very dangerous to live in the rainforest. My God. Yeah. It's also very, very dangerous to live in the rainforest because there's so many things that can actually kill you. So, it's not even worth it.
This Hulu Plus Live TV lineup is stacked. Let's meet the All-Stars. Live TV, Hulu.
Number 5, the Sahara Desert. Yep, we're going back into Africa again, this time North Africa with the Sahara Desert. The Sahara is like nature's own sun-baked sandbox, stretching across North Africa, covering a whopping 9 million square kilometers. It's not like endless dunes. This place is a patchwork of gravel plains, rocky plateaus, and the occasional oasis, painting a scene straight out of a Gatorade commercial. Explorers and scientists have all been trekking through the Sahara for centuries, uncovering secrets from ancient civilizations buried under the sand to discovering new species of plant and animals that have adapted to this extreme condition. What's fascinating is how the desert is a treasure trove of archaeological finds, like the remains of a once thriving city to the rock art that dates back thousands of years, telling tales of a time when the Sahara was green and lush. Yes, it was at one point. Every expedition proves how little we actually know about the Sahara Desert.
So tell me that at one point the Sahara Desert had trees on it. It's kind of hard to believe, but then that means that if we had a climate like that, that means that another climate, another part of the world was probably a desert back then, and it's not probably a forest. Because we probably had trees because the weather was different back then, or the environment. So now that we don't have it, it's probably because the environment changed. The Star Mountains.
Number 4, the Star Mountains in Papua New Guinea. The Star Mountains are like the final boss level of a nature exploration game. These mountains are seriously rugged and veiled in mystery, and that's part of the problem with exploring this place. These mountains are tucked away in the western part of Papua New Guinea, and the range is a world-class maze of peaks, valleys, and dense rainforests that seem to stretch on forever. What's interesting about this place is how much remains largely unexplored thanks to the formidable terrain and remote location. However, the bits we've managed to check out have revealed incredible biodiversity, with new species popping up every now and then during expeditions. It's not just the plants and animals, it's the rich cultural heritage as well, with indigenous communities living much as they have for centuries. Every time they explore this area, they get a glimpse into what feels like an untouched world.
There's still tribes, there's still people living in the forests out in Australia. That is crazy. How do they do it? I would not be able to make it alive if I was put back in a time machine and sent back to a time where we didn't know what was in the forest. I'd be scared. Imagine, imagine being, imagine seeing a tiger for the first time and thinking that you can tame it. Big mistake.
Number 3, the Siberian taiga. The Siberian taiga is a vast, sprawling wilderness, and it sometimes feels like something out of a fantasy
Siberian
novel,
taiga.
with its dense forests of pine, spruce, and fir trees stretching as far as the eye can see. This place is insane, especially the amount of life, plants, and animal that they have for a place that spends a good portion of the year frozen, including the Siberian tiger and the quirky flying squirrel. Yes,
They
there's a
live there?
tiger that lives in this frozen wasteland. Shouldn't say wasteland. Remote land. That sounds better. There was a Japanese naturalist
What
who,
if they live
I watched
there?
this documentary on him a few years back. He was trying to get footage of the Siberian tiger in the wild. Now, these things are very elusive and there's not many of them, and they cover a lot of land, so it's really hard to find them. This guy found a spot where he thought he could actually have a chance of filming one. He sat in this hole, which was about as big as the passenger compartment of, I don't know, like a Prius, and he sat there with his camera equipment and rice for about a year. I tried to find it again. I can't find it. I don't think it's on YouTube. If I happen to, I will put it in the description area below. It's really interesting. Through exploration, though, they've uncovered a realm where temperatures can swing from sweltering summers to winters that will freeze your back cheeks together. Researchers trekking through these remote forests have discovered ancient frozen peat bogs storing carbon for a millennia, revealing the taiga's crucial role in our global climate system. The taiga is a place of mystery where every expedition can feel like they're stepping into uncharted territory, even to this day.
That's so cool. That's honestly so cool though. Yucatan cenote. What?
Number 2,
Yucatan cenotes.
the Yucatan cenotes, Mexico. The cenotes of the Yucatan
Mexico.
Peninsula are natural sinkholes resulting from the collapse of limestone bedrock, exposing
That looks
groundwater
amazing.
underneath. Many of these underwater caves are connected
That
by an
looks so
extensive
cool.
yet largely unexplored cave system. They figure there's about 6,000. That's the estimate. If you look at Google Maps or
6,000.
something, there's only a couple hundred you could find. And of that, only about half of them or quarter of them are worth visiting. Some of them you don't want to visit because the Mayans used to bury people there. I had a
Oh,
tour one
shit.
time. Guy told us all about it. So there's bones.
Dude, imagine fishing in there. You go for a swim, put your goggles on, go at the deep of it, then you see somebody staring back at you. Oh, you fucking creep yourself. But also, that looks so cool. I don't know why they threw dead people in there. Looks like a very cool swimming pool. Not this one. The one we're looking at. This is a green one. Fuck that.
down there. You'd be floating along because
A bright blue one,
people go in there and they're
clear
like
water.
scuba
Looks
diving,
amazing.
find some
Look at that.
bones. Always pleasant. Now, they're not totally sure how many of these are. They say around 6,000, and they're not sure what percentage is explored, but they figure it's less than 10%.
Damn.
All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There's a link for that.
Northern Sentinel Island. Oh my god, I know about this.
And
I've heard about this
number
one many times.
North Sentinel Island. Location, Bay of Bengal, India. Now there's several islands in the Bay of Bengal. This one in particular, the North Sentinel Island, is home to the Sentinelese people. These are a pretty much uncontacted tribe. North Sentinel Island is one of the last places on Earth untouched by modern civilization. The island is heavily protected to preserve the way of life of its people and is off limits to outsiders. Now that doesn't mean people haven't tried to go there. One guy a few years back decided he was going to bring Christianity to the North Sentinelese people. They didn't want it, so they
nice.
filled them full of arrows, sadly.
Damn.
Really a tragic story. They've had a few other incidents where like boats
That's
ran
sad.
ashore on the reef around the island. There was one, I think it was the 1970s, where this cargo ship had said, hey, we're crashed on a reef and we could see these people on the shore on the island with arrows and spears building boats to come out and attack us. They eventually rescued the guys, but there's been a few incidents. Few fishermen have been killed by these people. Most of the contact, which has been very limited, like on the beach, and that's about it, was brief. I find the North Sentinel Island to be a very interesting story, and a lot of people have covered it on YouTube. Seeing that people have really only been on the beach, less than 1% of it.
Dude, how did they get their food though? Because it's an island. It's not like they have that much land either. It's a small island. They have shit ton of people. How did they get their food? Did they just eat each other? Fuck, I think that might be it. I think they might be doing cannibalism there. Just kill the weak ones to fucking survive. That's fucking crazy. They're like they're like people that are stuck in time, like thousands of years ago. They don't want to come to society because, I don't know, it's just a way of life. They don't want to see the outside world. That's just the thing about, bro. They have never visited any part of the world except that island. They don't know anything outside of the island, nor do they care that much either. And it's also very well protected, so that's actually pretty cool that they out. That's actually pretty cool that the Indian government wants to protect them. So yeah, I support that. Alright. Stop recording this. And what time is it? Yeah, we have time. Let's do one more video.
Is explored. This is part of
I'll be pretty fucking mad if the audio that I've been playing has just been ass. Oh my god. It looks like it's been low. No.
India, basically, or India has ownership of it.
Oh my god. It's gonna be so frustrating if I start editing and the audio quality is horrible, because I would hate for that to happen to me. But it does happen many times, so that's why I'm kind of mad right now. Alright. So those were two amazing videos. Alright, start recording again. Dre's Place Shorts, are you still there? Just making sure. Yeah, I don't think it is. Alright, so start recording again. Alright. So there's one that I want to watch called The Burning Wall.
I actually use Grammarly all the time to help me write emails to my team. They have pro features too, like sidebars. This
No.
Imagine having to.
So we're gonna be watching how the what the fuck. So we're gonna be watching how The Burning Wall worked by Neil.
Split a city into two completely separate parts. Roads that used to connect are now dead ends. Your job on the other side of the city, inaccessible. And the neighbor across the street that you used to see daily, you will perhaps never speak to him again. The Berlin Wall did exactly that, separating East and West for almost 30 years. For this video, I've animated the various development stages of the wall in order to understand the design of this unique piece of architecture. This is how the Berlin Wall worked. Living in Berlin before the wall was built was a strange life. You could move around the entire city freely, but you were either an East Berliner or a West Berliner. After the Second World War, the victorious nations had divided the German city into several parts. The Soviet occupation zone ultimately became the territory of East Germany.
Dude, we had the United States as per Berlin. How did we lose that land?
Socialist state, and the western part of Berlin remained legally occupied, but in all practicality, it belonged to West Germany, a capitalist state. Socialism and capitalism, two different nations, and even two different currencies, separated only by streets. Trains connecting the different parts of the city would make announcements: next station, last stop in the eastern zone. Many people lived in one part of the city but worked in the other. East Berliners took jobs in the West in order to benefit from the stronger currency, while West Berliners got their haircuts in the East at prices that were much cheaper to them. and in a way, both systems tried to outdo the other. In West Berlin, a multitude of stores sprang up on the Kurfürstendamm Street, shop windows filled with the latest brand name products of Western consumer culture. While just a few streets away in East Berlin, there was Stalinallee, a street that was transformed into a boulevard full of buildings in the style of socialist classicism. But this open coexistence of two systems wouldn't last long.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it would
On the
work.
13th of August 1961, Berlin woke up to a divided city. The East German government closed the border, which means that families were split apart. Though officially stating that this was necessary to protect their country, it was an effort to stop their own citizens from fleeing to the West, where opportunities, wages, and freedoms seemed greater. At the start, this was just a wall in name. It mostly consisted of fences and loose pieces of barbed wire, manned by guards. There were some unguarded stretches, and it was even possible to jump across.
So what happened if you want to work on the other side? You just have to pretty much stop living on the other side and change your nation? If you want to work?
Escaping more difficult, construction immediately began on a more permanent wall, made out of concrete and topped off with barbed wire coil around a Y-shaped metal arm. But this is not how the wall looked everywhere. A shortage of building materials meant that in the first years, just 10% of the border was built like this, and there was another issue. Sometimes the border between West and East Berlin went straight through housing blocks. Houses that now had to become part of the wall. The East German authorities forced people out of their homes.
So imagine going back home and imagine going back home and someone tells you that your house needs to get taken down to build a fucking wall. I'd be mad. Imagine being the investor that built like all those high-rise apartments and then they just take it down.
And filled the windows with bricks. Sometimes, however, they would forget a window. On August 17, 1962, Peter Fechter discovers one such house, making up part of the wall. Peter is frustrated with the East German government as they won't let him see his sister that lives on the other side of the wall. Together with his colleague Helmut, he fantasizes about an escape to the West. The two of them see people inside the house, and in order not to be noticed, they take off their shoes and quietly creep in. By sheer luck, they quickly find the open window, and from here, they have a clear view of the road to freedom. A fence, then a clear strip, and finally a wall.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 40.
It seems doable, except for the fact that they are in plain sight of the nearby border guards.
Dude, so they're pretty much like trying to escape, but to come back? That's weird. Why would they want to do that? Why don't you stay on one side?
Suddenly, they hear voices behind them, and it is now or never. Peter and Helmut jump out of the window and climb the first fence. Then they are spotted, and immediately the guards open fire.
You got shot?
Helmut dashes across the strip through a haze of bullets. As he scales the wall, he looks back and he sees his friend Peter frozen in place. The guards are closing in further, and they will have a clear shot soon. Helmut screams, and Peter finally springs into action. He makes it across the strip, but as he jumps up to scale the wall, he is hit mid-air and slumps down. Helmut can't help his friend. An entire 50 minutes passes as a crowd of onlookers gathers to see Peter lying on the ground, slowly dying at the base of the wall.
That's so sad. You just want to see his sister.
Tragic stories like Peter Fechter's were widely covered in the West. But for the East German authorities, the only lesson learned was to increase the wall. Over the course of decades, the wall is consistently upgraded, with more and more increasing security features. What once was a single wall soon became a brutal border strip, cutting the city further and further apart. As improvements to the wall were made, escape attempts shifted to new methods, and the wall would be expanded again.
Why didn't they just try to do a tunnel from one side to the other and then just kind of make it a secret? I feel like that would have worked perfectly. They took their time to go to the other side.
Back and forth that was repeated until the last version of the wall was built. The version of the wall that became famous. From 1975 on, the East German authorities rolled out this version of the wall, a border virtually impossible for anyone to cross. And this is how it generally worked. Coming from the east, only the visual barrier made of concrete slabs can be seen. This was done so that the exact border fortifications are not visible, as this knowledge could be used to plan escape attempts. Just behind this barrier, the ground is covered in so-called Stalin's grass. These are mats made of steel needles that would pierce the foot of anyone trying to jump across. Next up is a signal fence consisting of barbed wire stretched over concrete posts. Anyone trying to scale this fence would quickly press the wires together, triggering an alarm and notifying the guards in a nearby watchtower. Watchtowers were manned 24/7 by 2 to 5 soldiers. These soldiers had a clear view of the whole border, with orders to shoot anyone on sight.
Dude, what kind of society was this? Because we have a capitalist society next to a socialism society, but they're acting like this North Korea. It's just two of the same city, but they're dividing it to what looks to me to no. But they're dividing it for no reason, in my opinion, because it's still the same people living in the city. You can have people that support capitalism living on one side, and then people who are socialist also living on the same side as you. So it doesn't make sense to split a city like that.
Trying to use brute force to break these sections would not work either, as behind the signal fence are several rows of tank traps, barring anyone from driving through with a vehicle. In the middle of this border zone is a path for soldiers to patrol the area, oftentimes accompanied by dogs. And behind this is the so-called death strip, a stroke of dirt stretching for miles in every direction, in full sight of the guard towers. Hiding is impossible, and if anyone somehow made it past here, they reach a part that is easily recognizable: the wall facing the western side. In contrast to the old wall, these elements had a foot-shaped bottom, which meant that no holes in the ground were needed for their construction. And instead of barbed wire on top, there were now pipes made of asbestos concrete. These pipes provided stability for the wall elements, and the East German authorities also hoped that they would decrease the prison camp feeling of the previous wall. But this was not the only reason for the change. The new concrete used was extremely smooth, with nothing to grasp onto. One thing the authorities didn't consider, however, is that this smoothness made the wall an easy target for graffiti from the western side. Graffiti that would dominate many of the 45,000 elements that were placed in Berlin. Artworks that would often mock the East German government resulted in an open gallery of sorts, highlighting the harsh difference between life in the West, where free artistic expression was possible, and life in the East, where this was unthinkable. Exact numbers of victims from this wall are disputed, and it is something that to this day is being researched. But over the years, it was many who, just like Peter Fechter, were hoping for a better life on the other side of the wall.
Okay, but why didn't they just move before the wall was built? That's my question. Why couldn't you just have moved before it was built? Or maybe they were too young.
Booking.com has all kinds of stays because some love a sunny resort, others.
But the Berlin Wall was only a small part of the division of Germany. In addition to Berlin, the whole country was also divided into two parts, and some people made daring attempts, risking their lives to try to get to freedom. For example, the two friends Günter Wetzel and Peter Strelzik, who—
Wait, is the Berlin Wall still a thing today? Is there like actually people that still die from just trying to cross from one side to another to this day? I'm gonna figure it out later.
wanted to build a better life for themselves in the West. And after coming across an article about hot air balloons, an insane plan was born. The two decided to build their own homemade hot air balloon to escape across the border. After everything is sewn together, the burner is started and the balloon takes off. But then, immediately after taking off, a huge hole is torn in the top of the balloon, and they could crash to the ground from over 6,000 feet.
6,000 feet? You're fucked.
I made a complete video about this spectacular balloon escape, with some of my most elaborate animations and illustrations. And I was able to interview Günther for this project, who told me how the daring escape attempt went.
Plötzlich kamen vom Boden 3 Scheinwerferstrahlen auf uns zu. Und nach kurzer Zeit ist unsere Flamme ausgegangen.
This documentary is part of my ongoing Nebula original series Underexposure, in which I detailed animations made for the YouTube service, where the videos early actually wrote out all to Nebula sent off on an annual. So much for watching this.
I'm taking that part out. But I need to figure out. I actually am very curious. I need to figure out if this still a thing. If the Berlin Wall still exists. Oh, okay, it did stop. I was wondering why I didn't hear about it, but it was. So I searched up. Does the Berlin Wall still exist? The Berlin Wall no longer exists as a barrier. It was torn in 1989, and Germany was reunified in 1990. But parts of it still exist as historic reminders. Damn, I don't know. I thought that was still going on to this day, but that people just came. But people were just okay with it to this day, that they just kind of not talk about it. No, but people were still okay with it to this day, that they just really didn't care about the wall being up anymore. But yeah, amazing video, and I'm gonna cut it short today, right now, because yeah, man, I gotta go back to work. And I'll see you guys in the next one.